First, I want to, first of all, I could say perhaps Pan Chadashus Bolikan, not in the sense that it is by Sheva Brachas, but I'm not wearing my glasses because I had some surgery, cataract surgery on the eyes, and I have to eventually get glasses that work. So I apologize if I appear differently. The second thing is I want to mention that this year is dedicated in memory of Rabbi Yaakov Margolis, who lived in Chicago, who I used to learn together with him. He was an outstanding person, outstanding individual. I always mention my father's pasuk, Ki yadativ l'man asher yitzaveh bonavez beiso achrav, that he commands his children and his house after him. What does achrav mean by his example? He was an outstanding example of somebody who commanded by example. The way he lived his life, his sense of priorities, his dedication to Torah, his dedication to both mitzvahs bein adam l'chaveiro, bein adam l'makom, was unusual. And I could say about Rabbi Margolis, pasuk says, "Kim asar sa'adam yashar." God made man straight. V'heim bikshu cheshbonos harbe, that they had all kinds of cheshbonos. I would assume is rationalizations. They had all kinds of reasons how to deviate from being straight. Excuses. Some of the excuses were from excuses, and some of the excuses were not from excuses. About Rabbi Margolis, we could say he was made yashar, he remained yashar, he even died yashar. His whole life was a life of yashrus, of straightness. And his memory tonight in Eretz Yisrael, it's already nighttime already. Tonight is his yahrzeit, so we focus on his memory, and we hope that focusing on his memory will inspire us to act in the proper way. This coming week, Friday, is Asarah B'Teves. And Asarah B'Teves is one of the 4 fast days that we observe every year to commemorate the Churban, the destruction of Yerushalayim, the Jewish people going to Golus. And the 4 fast days are Asarah. I'm putting them in chronological order rather than in the order of the months, as we'll see soon. But Asarah B'Teves, that was the day when the Babylonians surrounded the city of Yerushalayim, laid siege around Yerushalayim. And in terms of the events that are commemorated regarding the destruction of the temple and regarding the Jewish people being forced to go to exile, Asarah B'Teves represents the beginning. And then is Shavasa B'Tammuz, the 17th of Tammuz. Now we observe it on the 17th of Tammuz because the Romans entered into Yerushalayim on the 17th of Tammuz. According to the Bavli, in the first Beis HaMikdash, the Babylonians entered Yerushalayim, penetrated the walls on the 9th of Tammuz. But because the destruction of the second destruction is considered, at least for us, to have greater effect from a perspective, so we observe it on the 17th of Tammuz. And then, of course, is Tisha B'Av, which commemorates the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. There are many other events that are identified, tragic events that are identified with Tisha B'Av. But it's primarily the days both Batei Mikdash were destroyed on the 9th of Av. And then there is Gimel Tishrei, which is Tzom Gedalia. Gedalia was sort of like the governor of Judea, the Jewish governor of Judea, after the Jewish people, after the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash and the destruction of the organized Jewish community. The Babylonians allowed the Jews to have some type of government and with the Jewish leadership. And Gedalia was the governor. I guess that's the best word to use. And then Gedalia was assassinated by Jews. And as a result of that, not only the Jews lost all control of Eretz Israel, but many catastrophes happened as a result of that. And Gimel Tishrei, there is a machlokes whether Gedalia was actually killed on Rosh Hashanah, as some of the Mefarshim seem to indicate, or that he was actually killed on the 3rd of Tishrei, as the Rambam says. And the pasuk in Zechariah mentions all these fast days. The Gemara in Rosh Hashanah discusses these fast days extensively. The pasuk in Zechariah says, Tzom HaRavi, the fast of the 4th month of the year, counting from Nisan, the 4th month of the year is Tammuz. So it's Shavasa b'Tammuz, the 17th of Tammuz, or the 9th of Tammuz. So that's Shavasa b'Tammuz, when the perimeters of Jerusalem, the enemy entered the perimeters of Jerusalem. And Tzom HaChamishi, that's Tisha B'Av. Tzom HaShvi, that's the fast of Gedalia. And Tzom HaSiri, the 10th month of the year, Teves. So that is Asarah b'Teves. Now, and the pasuk continues, these 4 fast days, these days will be days of joy and good holidays. And the Gemara says, it's very strange. On one hand, you say, Tzom, the fast of the 4th month of Shavasa b'Tammuz, the fast of the 5th month, Tisha B'Av, the fast of the 7th month, Tzom Gedalia, and the fast of the 10th month, Asarah b'Teves. Yiyel lebeis Yehuda will be days of joy. Kari lehutzom, you call it on one hand a fast day, a day of trouble, a day of calling out to God. And on the other hand, you refer to it as Sasam v'Simcha, as days of joy. How do you resolve this contradiction? And the Gemara says, Bisman sheyesh gzeros. And there's another girsa that says shmad. At a time that there are decrees against the Jewish people. So it's tzom. It'll be a fast day. It's fast days. It's very interesting. There is a machlokes between the Rambam and the Ramban. So according to the Ramban, when there are decrees against the Jewish people, so all 4 fast days have to be observed in the same way as Tisha B'Av is observed. In other words, Tisha B'Av is a 24, actually a little more than a 24-hour fast. And Tisha B'Av is also it's not just eating that's prohibited. All kinds of refraining from different pleasures are prohibited. One is not allowed to wash themselves. So all these days are prohibited. They have prohibitions associated with them. But when there's xeros, there's decrees. So all 4 fast days should be treated like Tisha B'Av. I always wondered, and I still do not really fully understand, why is it that during World War II, when there was never a time in Jewish history that had so many decrees against the Jewish people, people did not, those who are machmir for everything, were not machmir for the opinion of the Ramban that all 4 fast days should be treated like Tisha B'Av. I don't know. I understand the Jews in Europe, they had to be careful. The fasting would have put them in a predicament. They couldn't be weak physically. But there were Jews all over the world to a certain degree were in danger. The Nazis, Yamach Shemam, were trying to capture the whole world. They were trying to eliminate the Jewish race. And I never heard that people observed the 4 fast days the way all 4 fast days the way Tisha B'Av is observed. In the Rambam's opinion, okay, they probably relied on the Rambam, is that Tisha B'Av is different than the other fast days. Okay, so in the time there are xeros, there are decrees. From the perspective of the Navi, the Jewish people are required to observe all 4 fast days. Bisman sheyeh shalom, when there is peace. Now, what does peace mean? So there are those who explain peace. Rashi and Rabbeinu Hananel says it explicitly. Rashi implicitly, that Bisman sheyeh shalom means at the time when the Beis Hamikdash is rebuilt. So l'sasal simcha, then there will be days of joy. So according to Rashi and Rabbeinu Hananel, during the Beis Hamikdash, during the time of the Beis Hamikdash, the fast days, all 4 fast days were days of joy. They were holidays. It's very strange because, except for one place in the Gemara, we do not see any indication to that fact. That during the time of the second Beis Hamikdash, there should be other holidays. I think that Rashi's opinion was that it was a voluntary holiday, not a required holiday. But the Bisman sheyeh shalom, so according to Rashi and Rabbeinu Hananel, when the Beis Hamikdash is rebuilt, so at that time, the 4 fast days will be holidays. The Rambam says Bisman sheyeh shalom doesn't mean when the Beis Hamikdash is going to be rebuilt, but Bisman sheyeh shalom means when Mashiach comes. In other words, so Bisman sheyeh shalom, when Mashiach comes, the 4 fast days will the 4 fast days will be holidays. Why is it that Bisman sheyeh shalom? Because there's no real peace. There is no real peace until Mashiach comes. We have temporary pieces, and then we have pieces that aren't even temporary. like the Camp David Accords. My grandfather used to say, "Bake shalom v'radfehu." Search, everybody says, search for peace and run after it. My grandfather would explain, "Bake shalom v'radfehu." Search out the peace, and only after you search it out, run after it. Because very often, the peace agreement, as they call it, is a subterfuge. The peace agreement is followed by terrorism. The peace agreement is followed by bombs. The only true peace will be when Mashiach comes. I assume that the reason Rashi and Rabbeinu Hananel say Bisman Sheyeh Shalom, when there is peace, has reference to when the Beis Hamikdash is rebuilt, because we see when David asked God that he wants to build the Beis Hamikdash, the Gemara says, God, the Navi says that David said that was when God when the threat of the enemies around him was taken away. So in other words, the prerequisite for building the Beis Hamikdash is shalom, is peace. That you shouldn't be at war. Part of the reason probably is because the Beis Hamikdash should not be a monument to bloodshed. Even David HaMelech, who went to war, and it was identified with victories and victories on behalf of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Nevertheless, he couldn't build the Beis Hamikdash because the Beis Hamikdash has to be identified with shalom, with peace. The purpose of the Beis Hamikdash is to make peace between HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the Jewish people, and between HaKadosh Baruch Hu and mankind. And you need peace. You need peace for the that the Beis Hamikdash should be identified with peace. And then then the Gemara says, but there's a third situation, and the third situation is Ein Shalom Ve'ein Gzeros, when there is no peace and there is no decrees against the Jewish people. According to Rashi and the Rabbeinu Hananel, that's like today. The Beis Hamikdash is not in existence. We don't find Gzeros, we don't find decrees against the Jewish people. So, Ratzu Misanim, Ratzu Ein Misanim. Those who want to fast can fast. There's a mitzvah kiyumis, a voluntary mitzvah of fasting. Ratzu Ein Misanim, but those who don't want to fast, they don't have to fast. But the Rishonim point out that was in those days. Today, we accept it upon ourselves. The Jewish people themselves accepted upon themselves to fast on all 4 fast days. And according to the Rambam, the Rambam's opinion is that Ein Shalom Ve'ein Gzeros, that's in the time of the base, when the second Beis Hamikdash was built. Ein Shalom, Mashiach didn't come yet. Ve'ein Gzeros, there was no decrees against the Jewish people. What does that mean? I think that the Rambam's opinion is that there were no that when the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, the decree to destroy the Beis Hamikdash is considered to be in force so long as the Beis Hamikdash is not in existence. So in a sense, even today, there are decrees against the Jewish people. It's not the decrees of the governments around the world. It's the decree of an ancient nation. It's the decree of the Romans. They decreed that the Beis Hamikdash should not be in existence. And that decree remains in force today, unfortunately. So according to the Rambam, the fasts today are required fasts. According to the other Rishonim, in theory, they are voluntary fasts. But we accepted upon ourselves these voluntary fasts. But it's a voluntary fast. When I was in high school, in the first 3 years of high school, I went to the Mesivta of Crown Heights. And the head of the Mesivta was Reb Chaim Siegel Zatzal. He was an outstanding Rebbe. He introduced us to the study of Rishonim, study of Achronim, and they used to have Thursday night was required night seder. You had to show up. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday was a voluntary seder. But heaven help you if you didn't come to the voluntary Seder. So I think that's the idea of the other fast days today, according to Rashi and the Rabbeinu Hanano. Today, it's Ein Zeros, there's no decrees, but Ein Shalom, there's no Beis Hamikdash. So the fast days are voluntary, but we accepted it upon ourselves to do these voluntary fast days. So the fast day is voluntary, but we're required to observe the voluntary fast days. Now, the Pasuk lists the fast days. Som Revi, that's the fast day of the 4th month, that's Shavas B'Tammuz. And Som HaChamishi, that's the fast day of Tisha B'Av, the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash, the destruction of the temple. Tzom HaShvi is Tzom Gedalia. Gedalia was killed. But Tzom HaSiri, we say that's Asarah B'Teves. That's when the Romans, the Babylonians encircled Yerushalayim. This is the way Rabbi Akiva learned the Psukim. And Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai asked the question against Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva was his Rebbe, but he asked the question. He says, it seems to be out of chronological order. The Romans encircled Jerusalem. That was the first act. And it's listed last. And Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai says, Rabbi Akiva lists them l'seder chadashim, in the order of the months. And I list them in the chronological order in which they happened. Why? Because Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai's opinion is the fast day of the 10th month of Teves is not on the 10th of Teves, but it's on the 5th of Teves. And what happened on the 5th of Teves? The 5th of the Teves, the Jews in exile found out how Yerushalayim was destroyed. And because of this, they decreed a fast. And figuratively, we, the Jews of future generations, joined the mourning and the fast. According to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, of the Jews of that time, the Jews of Golos, the Jews of exile, who only heard months after the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash about the siege of Jerusalem. So in a sense, we are joining them in their fast. But the Gemara says one thing. The Gemara says that even though these fasts, in theory, when there is no xeris, when there are no decrees, against the Jewish people, and there's no shalom, let's say no Beis Hamikdash, is voluntary under ideal circumstances. But Tisha B'Av until Mashiach comes, because such great tragedies happened. So many great tragedies happened on Tisha B'Av that Tisha B'Av is never a voluntary fast until Mashiach comes. So now these 4 fast days are somewhat different than Yom HaKippurim, even Tisha B'Av. These 4 fast days, if they fall out on the Shabbos, so they are postponed to Sunday. The Gemara in Megillah says a person could raise a question: should they be postponed or should we do them earlier? And the Gemara in Megillah says when it comes to perennials, when it comes to the catastrophes, we do not commemorate catastrophes earlier, because when you commemorate catastrophes, we try to postpone catastrophes. We do not want in a sense, we're re-experiencing the catastrophes. So we postpone the catastrophes. It's interesting. There is a machlokes, a discussion. If somebody died in a year that there was only one Adar, and the question comes up, which Adar should the yard site be observed? Some say the Mechaber says the second Adar. The Ramah says it's best to observe both Adars, but the first Adar, if you have to choose, the first Adar is the time to observe. The Shita, the Vilna Gaon Shita is that you observe both Adars. But what's the question dependent on? So most Rishonim explain that the question is, which Adar is the main Adar? Is the first Adar the main Adar, or is the second Adar the main Adar? Is which Adar is the extra Adar? Is the first Adar the extra Adar, or the second Adar is the extra Adar? However, there are some that explain the machlok is different than the Rishonim. Some explain that the argument is over this point, because in reality, both Adars are an anniversary of the day of death, where a person died in a year there was one Adar. But the question is, on one hand, there are those who feel it's a commemoration of a catastrophe. And since it's a commemoration of a catastrophe, we postpone it. And there are others who feel that no, that a mitzvah habali yodchal tachmitzena, a mitzvah that comes to your hand, you don't postpone it. You don't. It's similar to letting the dough rise on the matzah that you're making. If the dough rises on the matzah that you're making, it's not good. It's halachically, the matzah is not good. It's chametz. So a mitzvah, so you should observe the first Adar. Why? So the argument, what is the argument? The argument is, and actually this shaila came up this year also. There weren't 2 Adars this year, but somebody asked me a shaila question. Just their father died on the 30th of Kislev. The father died on the 30th of Kislev. And this year, there was no 30th of Kislev. There was 29 days in Kislev, and there was one day, and the next day was Rosh Chodesh Teves. So somebody who died on the 30th of Kislev, when should he observe? Should he observe it on the 29th of Kislev, or should he observe it on the first of, or should he observe it on the first of Teves? And there is a machlokus about it. The Mishnah Berurah and the Magen Avram say that you observe it on the 29th of Kislev, and the Aruch HaShulchan and Rav Moshe Feinstein, they paskin that you observe it on the first of Teves. I think the question is on this point. What is the nature? What is the nature of Yartzeit? Is Yartzeit a day of Avelus, of mourning, of commemorated mourning? In which case, in the sense, it's Avelus, it's mourning, so it's postponed. Or is Yartzeit a day of tshuva? In other words, because the halacha is a person is required to do tshuva on the last day of their life. But because they don't know which day they're going to die, you have to do tshuva every day, the Gemara says. Every day, to a certain degree, is a suffix Yom HaMisa. And Yartzeit, in a sense, is accepting upon ourselves that obligation that the person who died had. And in other words, the question can boil down to this point. Is Yartzeit identified with the first day of death? Or is Yartzeit identified with the last day of life? If Yartzeit is identified with the last day of life, then it's a mitzvah of tshuva. So mitzvah habab liyotchal tach mitzena. Then you should observe the 29th. As the Magen Avram says, and as the Mishnah Berurah says. But if Yartzeit commemorates the first moment of death, then it's Avelus, then it's mourning. So which day is identified with death? Not the 29th. The 29th, he was alive. So he observes the first day that is identified with death in this year would be Rosh Chodesh Teves. And the same thing, to a certain degree, is with Adar. If we see Yartzeit as a day of tshuva, mitzvah haboli yodchal tach mitzena, then you should observe the Yartzeit in the first Adar. But if we observe Yartzeit in the if Yartzeit is to be identified as a day of mourning, as a day of Avelus, so it's a catastrophe, commemorating catastrophe. Where there is a choice of 2 days, we postpone it, and because of that, the Gemara says these days when these fast days fall out on Shabbos, and they certainly are commemorating catastrophes. They're commemorating the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. They're commemorating the golus of the Jewish people. They're commemorating the hundreds of thousands of Jewish people, the millions of Jewish people that were killed, not only at the time of the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash, but throughout the history of the golus. So then it's postponed, and that's why when these 4 fast days fall out on Shabbos, these 4 fast days are postponed to Sunday. Now we know that Shavasa B'Tammuz very often falls out on Shabbos, and it's postponed to Sunday. Tzom Gedalia falls out on Shabbos at times, and it's postponed to Sunday. Tisha B'Av falls out on Shabbos, and it's postponed to Sunday. Tainus Esther, which is part of the celebration of Purim, is not identified with catastrophe. Consequently, it's observed the Thursday before. But in regard to Asarah B'Teves, most Shitos seem to say, the Rambam certainly, the Shulchan Aruch certainly, say that if Asarah B'Teves, according to the calendar, never falls out in Shabbos. But before the calendar was instituted, Asarah B'Teves was able to fall out in Shabbos. So most Rishonim seem to say, even though I think the raya that they bring to that effect is not the compelling raya, not compelling evidence, but for most Rishonim it appears that what's assumed that most Rishonim hold that in the theoretical case, for us it's theoretical, but before Hillel Sheni composed the calendar was actual. If Asarah B'Teves fell out in Shabbos, so like the other fast days, it was postponed to Sunday. However, Beis Yosef brings the Shita of the Abudram, and the Abudram Shita is that Asarah B'Teves is different than the other fast days of the 4 fast days commemorating the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash. On Asarah B'Teves, if it should fall out in Shabbos, in our calendar it can only fall out on Friday. It doesn't fall out in Shabbos. But if Asarah B'Teves falls out in Shabbos, you have to fast on Shabbos. The only other fast day like that is Yom HaKippurim. Yom HaKippurim, if it falls out on Shabbos, we fast on Shabbos. So the Avudram says that Asarah B'Teves has to be treated like Yom Kippur, and if it should fall out in Shabbos, we would have to fast on Shabbos. And why is that? Because in the 24th parak of Yecheskel, it says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu said to, sent a message to Yecheskel, Ben Adam, Ksov lecha Shem Hayom, write down the name of this day. There is a discussion, what does Shem Hayom mean? Es etzem Hayom hazeh. The essence of this day. Some say the essential inner power of this day. Etzem Hayom is somach. So write this down. What does write down? Write means declare it, make it clear, give it over. Some say it was part of the message that Yecheskel sent to the communities about Asarah B'Teves. Samach Melech Bavel El Yerushalayim, the king of Bavel of Babylonia, sent his troops around Jerusalem. Be'etzem Hayom Hazeh. So in the essence of this day, and the word essence Hayom, Be'etzem Hayom Hazeh, is mentioned in regard to Yom Kippur. So Rav Utram says, so just like by Yom Kippur, the day is essential. It has to be on that particular day. If it falls out on Shabbos, you fast on Shabbos. So too, Asarah b'Teves. If it falls out on Shabbos, you would have to fast on Shabbos. That's very strange. Tisha B'Av, if it falls out on Shabbos, we postpone it to Sunday. Asarah b'Teves, if it fell out on Shabbos, you would have to fast on Shabbos, according to the Avudra. How are we to understand? How are we to understand that? And there is an answer given by Rabbi Chaim. Rabbi Chaim said, when Zechariah mentions the 4 fast days, he doesn't mention a day. He mentions a month. He says, so the Tzom HaRevi, the fast of the 4th month, Tzom HaChamishi, so that which is Tzom HaRevi is Shavasa b'Tammuz, because Tammuz is the 4th month from Nisan. Tzom HaShvi, that's the fast. It's Tzom HaChamishi, I'm sorry. That's the fast of Tisha B'Av, because Tisha B'Av is the 5th month from Nisan. Tzom HaShvi, that's Tzom Gedalia, the 3rd day of Tishrei, because Tishrei is the 7th month. But Tzom HaAsiri, that is the fast of the 10th month, Asarah b'Teves. So the Navi Zechariah does not identify it by the day. He identifies it by the month. He identifies it by the month. So he says that's why those fasts can be postponed, because the Navi only declared what month the fast should be, but he left it up to future generations. When I say future generations, I don't mean today. Future generations means to the Chachmei HaMasorah, who came to an end at the time of the Chasimas HaTalmud, the rabbis who passed over the oral tradition. So they can determine, based on the situation of the time, which day in that particular month the fast could be. So if the fast, since there is an alternative, since the fast could be declared to be on another day of the month, so you can postpone, if the fast falls out on Shabbos, it can be postponed to Sunday, to the next day, because the next day is also a day within that month. However, Asarah b'Teves, since Yecheskel said, Be'etzem hayom hazeh, he identifies the remembrance, Ksov lecha, right for you, and Be'etzem hayom hazeh, the essence of this day. So the fast day is not just identified with the month. The fast day is identified with the day. So it can't be postponed, because if it's postponed, it's a different day. And Yecheskel said, the day is very significant here. It's not enough to identify the fast day with the month. It has to be identified with the day. So it can't be postponed. That's how Reb Chaim explained the sheet of the Avudra. But we have to understand, in any case, so we understand how it's deduced from the Psukim. But there must be a lesson that we can derive from the fact that Asarah b'Teves is different, that Asarah b'Teves is different from the other 3 fast days. Why is it that Asarah b'Teves cannot be postponed? Now, what is unique about Asarah b'Teves? In a sense, the whole process of the siege of Jerusalem The whole process of the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash, the whole process of the Jewish people losing control of Eretz Yisrael, complete control of Eretz Yisrael, the whole process of the Jewish people going into Golus and facing the travail of Golus, the catastrophe of Golus, began on Asarah B'Teves. And what is the purpose of the fast days? Well, Tisha B'Av is both. It's tza'aka, it's crying out to God for help. And Tisha B'Av is also mourning. It has both elements in it. When in the evening, in the morning, Tisha B'Av, we say kinnis. We don't say slichas. Why? Because slichas is calling out to God for help. And in the morning, we emphasize the morning aspects, the morning aspects, the availus aspect of Tisha B'Av. But comes Mincha, there are certain changes that take place in the attitude of Tisha B'Av on Mincha. Mincha, the main focus, of course, there's still mourning, but the main focus in the Mincha time is crying out to God. What do we learn by Mincha Tisha B'Av? Vayichal. What is Vayichal? Hashem, Kel Racham V'chanan. When you were in trouble, God told Moshe Rabbeinu, do this, say Hashem, Kel Racham V'chanan Erech Habayim, Rav Chesed Emes. So, and the other fast days, certainly, is primarily tzaka, crying out to God. There might be an element of avelus also, but it's certainly crying out to God. But my sense is that which is the day that most represents crying out to God for help? I think that is Asarah B'Teves. Why? Because Asarah B'Teves is when the trouble began. In other words, we have to realize our predicament, not after the catastrophe has been done, but when it's beginning, at the very beginning. We know we're suffering now from an epidemic. And what's those that are critical of the administration? What are they critical about? That preparation wasn't made at the very beginning. Personally, I don't believe that, but okay. And if there is today, now that there is inoculations, why is there inoculations? Because at the very beginning, they started working on it. If it was postponed, who knows what would have happened? We have to take notice of the problem when it's first beginning, not afterwards. Because if we postpone, it might be too late. And I think that's the message of Asarah B'Teves according to the Avudram. The message of Asarah B'Teves according to the Avudram is don't wait till the enemy is there killing us. Don't wait till the enemy destroys the Beis Hamikdash. Don't wait till the enemy eradicates all Jewish government. But at the very beginning, And halachically, of course, there was trouble beforehand, but halachically for generations, what represents the very beginning? The surrounding of Yerushalayim by the Babylonian troops. That can't be postponed. It's B'yetzem Hayom Hazeh. It's the essence of the day. One can't fast Motzei Yom Kippur because of the din of Yom Kippur. It has to be Be'etzem Hayom Hazeh, in the essence of the day. So it's identified not just with the month, it's identified with the day as well. So that, therefore, according to the Avudram, if Asarah B'Tevei should fall out in Shabbos, you can't postpone to Sunday because Sunday might be too late. And it's very interesting. In this week's Sedra, Yosef, when he tells the brothers to bring Yaakov down, what does he say to his Maharu va'alu esaviv va'amartem elav? Okay, Maharu, run quickly. Okay, al tirgazu b'derech. Some say don't take large steps, and some say don't procrastinate. In other words, of course, you have to do it in a safe manner, but don't postpone, don't procrastinate. In other words, you have to act quickly. There is a danger, Yosef said. There's a famine. And who knows what's going to happen the next day? Why did Yosef wait this long? That's for a different reason. The reason Yosef waited that long was because he understood that the dreams that he had were Beruach HaKodesh. It was almost like Nebuah, like prophecy. And just like there is a halacha, there is a law. And Yosef understood that as prophecy. Why did Yosef torture his brothers by telling them his dreams? He tortured his brothers telling them the dreams because there's a halacha that when one receives prophecy, he has to give over the prophecy. Navi shekavash nevuaso is chayiv misa. It could be that this wasn't the same halachic status, but nevertheless, there is a reason for it. There is a message to be given over. He was given the message to be given over. But not only was he given the message to be given over, but he was given the message in order to bring it into fruition. And it's mentioned in last week's Sedra that when he saw his brothers, when he recognized his brothers, he remembered his dreams, la'echab. He remembered the dreams he had to his brothers. What does it mean, la'echab? You could say concerning his brothers, but to his brothers. Because the dream was something that was a message that he had to give to his brothers. Not only was it a message that he had to give to his brothers, but it was a message, it was a prophecy that he had to bring into fruition. And the only way to bring it into fruition was, in a certain sense, to let nature take its course. But once, to a large degree, that was accomplished, he could say Maharu, quickly, because you don't know. There is a famine. You don't know what is going to happen tomorrow in times of catastrophe. And according to some of the Mefarshim, as I mentioned, al tirgazu b'derech means do not procrastinate. You have to nip it in the bud. You can't postpone. And we know of many cases during World War II. We have a tendency, especially when it comes to leaving a country, when there's a threat, a life and death threat, a threat of catastrophe hangs over us, we're not so quick to leave. No one wants to leave. It's not easy, economically, psychologically, to leave. But we have to leave. And because we don't know what tomorrow will bring. How many people in World War II, when the problems first began, some of them had opportunities to leave, but they wanted to wait a while to see what happens. And unfortunately, we know the results of the waiting. And I once heard from Rabbi Fassman, a blessed memory. He said, I think he was at that time a rabbi in Canada. I'm not sure whether it was that time or earlier. He was a rabbi in Canada. He was involved in helping bringing over people before the war from Europe. And he mentioned that arrangements were made for them to go on a boat, and the boat was leaving on Shabbos. And some of the people traveled on Shabbos on the boat. I was told by someone who was on the train with Baron Kotler. Okay, he didn't board the train on Shabbos, but he was on the train on Shabbos. There's no shaila, sakonas nefashos, is docha kol Torah kula. Some of the yeshiva fellas, according to the story Rabbi Fassman told me, they didn't want to go on the boat on Shabbos. That was the last boat out. They missed that boat. When it comes to sakana, when it comes to danger, you have to seize the moment. Seize the moment in regard to davening to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but also seize the moment in taking steps to remove the danger or to remove yourself from the danger. And we can complain all we want about the government, that they didn't act quick enough, that they didn't seize the moment early enough. But first we have to look at ourselves. And we have to say, we were warned. If we acted earlier, what would have happened? There are those that even today, that the incidents repeat itself time after time again, refuse to acknowledge the problem. There are those who refuse to acknowledge the problem, and they themselves caught the disease. Some died and some survived, but they're still giving excuses. And they're inspiring those who did not get the disease to continue the same path, the same false path that they went on. Listen, hindsight is 20/20 vision. And maybe we can't blame them. It's been 100 years since the last epidemic. And we certainly have greater medical knowledge now. Maybe they just refuse to acknowledge the importance of medicine. They think they know better than the doctors. You know, the most stupid thing I see is you have letters written, signed by Rabbanim about what precautions to take. And then underneath it, the doctors agree. It's so stupid. I would think the way to do it is to have the doctors say what the precautions are. And underneath it, have the Rabbanim sign that we are required to listen to what the doctors say because they're the expert in the area. But the arrogance of these people that cost nefashos Israel is no. It has to be our decision. The Rabbanim have to tell the people what to do. When people suffer from a small malady, they have to buy medicine at a drugstore. Who writes the prescription? The doctors or the Rabbanim? The doctors write it. So is nefashos any less important? If they can't write a prescription for cough medicine, they should tell people how to act when there's an epidemic. What they have to say is follow what the Rabbanim say. If they want to be more stringent, I understand it.
Follow what the doctors say.
What the doctors say. When they want to be more stringent, sakonis nefashos, okay, tavo leihem bracha. We find that very often. When it comes to fasting Yom Kippur, sometimes we follow what the Rabbanim say because it's more stringent than what the halacha says. But when it comes to these type of things, you have to understand people focus their whole lives in learning. Tavo leihem bracha. They should understand that the experts in the area, just like they don't want doctors paskening shilas about kashrus, when it comes to sakonis nefashos, they are the experts. And unfortunately, we're beginning to learn it the hard way. And there were those that recognized the problem, but a little bit late. And I'm not blaming them because this is the first time that we encountered this epidemic, an epidemic in 100 years, this type of epidemic. Hindsight is 20/20 vision. I also had my doubts at the very beginning. But we have to learn our lesson. That's what Asarah b'teves is. Asarah b'teves is to seize the moment before it's too late. And there is and the truth is, we find the significance of seizing the moment. We find the significance in other areas also, on the contrary. When it comes to Oz Yashir, when it comes to Oz Yashir, it says Oz Yashir. Shira, as opposed to Kriya, has to be as a reaction. But if you postpone, it's not Shira. Oz Yashir. As soon as Kriyas Yamsuf took place, as soon as the Jewish people were saved, Oz, at that moment, they seized the moment. That is what Asarah b'teves tells us. Asarah b'teves is a message that we have to be a master of time. We have to seize the moment. We cannot postpone. And while this is true in all areas of life, and in spiritual areas, very important, when it comes to sakonis nefashos, it's even more important. And that's why Asarah b'teves, which represents the very beginning, cannot be postponed. according to that Budram, even if it falls on Shabbos. Okay. All right. Any questions?
If anyone has questions, please put them in the chat. No questions yet. I guess without the glasses, we were able to see the full Ziva Shechina, so we understood it more. They didn't question.
Well, asking questions also is dependent on understanding it.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay. All right, Beli Netter, next month. I don't know if I'll have glasses yet, but whatever. At least everybody sees me, even if I can't see everybody. Okay. No questions.
Yes, I thank you.
Yeah, okay. No, okay, bye-bye.